Hey, welcome on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balley here to give you the latest of what's going on in the sporting world. Episode number 93. Mitch is going to be back here with you, man.
Always a pleasure, sir. Plenty to talk about.
Just a lot of things here to do for the rest of the week that we are getting into. We are back to 2 times a week here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. And before we get into everything that's going on today, we want to start off with a segment that we are bringing back for this season where you guys know what's going on the latest in this week in Big Time Sports. This is where we go over our broadcasting schedule to give you guys the latest of what's going on and what you'll be able to see in your upcoming airwaves here on Big Time Sports. This week, we will bring you back the Big Time Sports Show, one of our staples here, hosted by Charlie Jones, on Wednesday, August 2nd and at 7 p.m. and Friday, August 4th at 10 p.m. You will get to see members of Dover's volleyball team. The Crimson Tornadoes coming back into play this season. You will be able to see the likes of them in the Big Time Sports studio at those respective times. And then we will have a beginning of our upcoming high school football season slate coming up on August 17th. So stay tuned as you will see the opening games on Thursday, August 17th. Fairless taking on Sandy Valley in a matchup of last year's season debut, and Canton Central Catholic taking on Perry. You can check out those games on cable TV Spectrum 15 and 989, as well as MCTV 128 or WIVMTV.com. Watch all of our games and weekly shows anywhere in the world. I mean, Mitch, we got so many games to get to here coming up very soon as the football season is coming very closely. Volleyball and golf right behind them. What can you tell us about the upcoming slate for the Canton area, the Madison area, the Stark County area of what's going on here on Big Time?
Well, Mitch, we get to start getting introduced to the football teams this side of Stark County, and you can catch the Green Bulldogs, who have lost a number of players, but are also returning a solid number of players, including key running back Antonio Martin, who was lost for the tail end of the football season last year and the basketball season for Green. He will return now, coming back from an ACL injury. You can catch them with Joe Dunn on the Big Time Sports TV show Thursday, August 3rd at 7:30 p.m. and Saturday, August 5th at 8:30 a.m. here as we kick off getting to know some of these teams, the players, the coaches here in Stark County already this week in the first week of August.
Absolutely. And be sure to check out all of our stuff here on BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can find our schedule there, our latest articles and videos. We'll have game articles coming up here in the next couple of weeks to recap everything going on in Tuscarawas and Stark. So let's start off, Mitch, by talking about the high school level stuff, because fall sports practices began this past Monday as teams are now officially back together again to get ready for their upcoming seasons. I mean, looking at a lot of the stuff this year, it's very interesting to see some of the dynamics between the certain teams in each respective league. My area, the IVC, your area, the Federal League right now. And starting on the side we usually talk about on football, I mean, where do we anticipate the Federal League to be standing at this year, coming off a season in which a couple of teams were able to make names for themselves in postseason runs? We had a few of them really very late in the playoffs down the stretch. But when you look at some of the in conference matchup between these squads, I mean, what is there to take away from it?
I would say, just based on we know who is returning, Mitch, it's atop the Federal League in terms of the preseason poll. It has to be Canton McKinley and North Canton Hoover. Hoover obviously bringing back what is expected to be the top quarterback in the Federal League in Carson Derlin, a Division I recruit. He will now be a 3-year varsity starter as he heads into his senior season at Hoover. We talked about him a little bit during the baseball season, but obviously he is known for his play on the football field. Not only can he throw the ball around, but Mitch, when he needs to, he can use his legs, and that's a big reason why he is Division I recruit. Canton McKinley, though, we know they are typically always very, very talented in terms of the athletes they have there at that school. They're able to out-physical most teams, impose their will, and we will see now with head coach Antonio Hall at the helm for what I believe is his 3rd season, how does this team really respond? We know the big game that's always highlighted between them comes in week 10 of the high school football season when they take on their arch rival Massillon, the longest standing high school football rivalry in the country. But there's 9 weeks before that, and they obviously cannot afford to look ahead to that all season long, because this is a team, Mitch, that is trying to get back to the standard of which McKinley once was back in the 90s and the early 2000s. After that, Mitch, you look at Lake, a team you kind of mentioned that made a deep playoff run last year all the way to the state semifinals before losing to Massillon. or the regional final, excuse me, before losing to Massillon. Where do they pick up after losing a very talented senior class? Jackson, losing running back Jason Davide and almost the entirety of their starting offensive line. What does that offense look like this year? We know Jackson typically likes to run the football. Are they going to look more towards the air raid side of things now with what is expected to be quarterback Lucas Eckerman in the starting role as a sophomore? He saw playing time down the stretch last year and started, I believe, the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season, including into the playoffs. Then Perry, always a very talented team, a team that's hard to game plan for because of the style of offense in which they play over there, obviously under the longtime great Coach Wakefield, now passing it off to another coach. It's just, where are they? Where is Green? Green had that air raid offense last year. I mean, this is going to be a wide open federal league in terms of the teams after Canton, McKinley, and Hoover, just based off of what did they lose and now what is their plan of attack, both offensively and defensively. We'll have to wait and see. I'm very excited because, much like college football, Mitch, high school football, anybody can beat anybody on any given day. And that's what makes high school football so special, because these kids are already starting practice earlier this week. They put in all this crucial time and preparation and making sure they develop as players, making sure the team develops as players, and the coaches game plan to put their guys in the right position to go out and win football games on Friday nights. I'm very excited to see the season get underway. What I believe is now 15 days we are away already from kickoff of the high school football season. So I'm excited. I know you're excited about what's going on down there in Tuscarawas County and in the IVC.
Oh, there's a number of players that I'm very much looking forward to see return. A number of these guys actually trying to kind of build upon what they weren't able to last season. You take a look at a guy like Nick Petra out in Sandy Valley. This guy is an athlete. He was a first teamer in baseball this past spring in the All-Star County team. He missed 4 games in the football season, though, however, because of an injury that he suffered. And I was there last year during the Sandy Valley Cardinals home opener loss to Fairless. He still managed over 1,000 yards passing with 8 touchdowns, no picks that year. And Sandy Valley had a bit of an off season, but with him back under center, fully healthy, that can be a really good thing for their offense. And then you look at a guy like Jared Withero from Massillon, who's returning as a junior running back. It's going to be a very interesting sort of dynamic for that Massillon offense and what he's been going to be able to do. Or quarterback, excuse me. And then, you have a number of other guys in there that really are going to make some things interesting. A lot of the guys that Garaway and Ridgewood are returning. I mean, Garaway is going to take a huge hit with the big loss in their senior class this year, but I still expect them to compete somewhat. Ridgewood, I think, will have the opportunity to get back up as John Sluss will be able to help his team get back up to the top of the IVC South this year. Another guy that I want to talk about too, and he's very interesting to me, is Carson Colucci, the senior from Fairless. This is a guy that passed for over 2,500 yards this past year, 29 touchdowns, 8 picks. He completed almost 70% of his passes. He was a third-team All-Ohioan, and he helped the Falcons win a share of their second straight Pac-7 championship. He's also a guy that can really work well on the ground. He had 7 rushing touchdowns last year, just under 500 rushing yards. And he's a guy that can really is a serious catalyst for the Falcons offense this year. Time will tell how he's going to work around with his receiving core, just having some new guys come in, some guys returning. As far as Stark County goes, but this is going to be very interesting to me because we'll get to the running backs in a second. Quarterback right now, there's an abundance of talent, upper class talent in Stark. You have guys like Poochie Snyder from Canton South. You have Zerberg, you mentioned, from Alliance. You have a guy in Jalen Slaughter, the junior from Massillon, who's getting a transfer from Copley, DeJuan Owens, who could help him be a serious threat in the long ball game. You also have guys like Keaton Road from McKinley and a guy like Cale Jarvis from Lake. And the last one I wanted to get to, Carson Dearland, the man who put up some of the most absurd passing numbers I saw last year on Hoover's side. It's gonna be very interesting to see that. I mean, kind of take us through a lot of the guys that you're really tagged on under center this year.
Well, it has to start with Poochie Snyder. I mean, this quarterback and athlete from Canton South, Mitch, has been as good as advertised, right? The numbers he has put up at Canton South and the games that Canton South has been able to win over the past couple of seasons with him under center, they have raised some eyebrows. And he is a sought after athlete to play college football at the next level. We'll see ultimately where he decides to go, if that's the route he wants to go when it comes to football.
I'll answer that for you. He committed to Sacred Heart, an FCS program, on Saturday. So congratulations to
there
Poochie.
you go. Sacred Heart right there, Mitch, is getting a steal of a player. You hear this all the time, what quarterback size, right? The hand size, the height, the weight. Poochie Snyder has defied all those odds no matter who they play week in, week out in high school football. And so Sacred Heart now, knowing that Poochie Snyder is committed there, is getting a tremendous athlete. Carson Derlin. I had the pleasure of being able to watch him at least 3 times off the top of my head last year. He can throw the football around. And like I mentioned, he can beat you with his legs. I mean, he is as good as advertised as well. Keaton Rhode from McKinley, obviously, with a ton of talent around him as well. That does not take away the talent he has in the pocket. And Zerbrook, we talked about him a few weeks ago after he decommitted from Syracuse, committed to Northwestern. And now, Mitch, after everything going on at Northwestern, Coach Pat Fitzgerald being let go amidst this investigation, we have some news on him. I know you broke it to me this morning as well, but it looks like Brendan Zerbrug is on the move yet again.
Yes, via the Canton Repository, Zerbrug will be committed to the University of Oklahoma now. As it's a very interesting move, the third school that he's committed to, and this is a guy that last year was one of the top, most heavily recruited Stark County QBs, a very good college project. He was a second team All Ohio, and he averaged a career best 39. Well, this is his punting numbers alone. It's 39 yards a punt. It was also the place kicker for Alliance last year. And as far as his quarterbacking goes, 2,100 passing yards, just above that, 23 touchdowns, 76.2% of his passes were complete. That's pretty good for a lot of high school quarterbacks comparison. Also ran for over 800 yards, 7.4 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns, just doing it all there. It's really, really fascinating. I want to go back to Rhode for a second because this is third year as Canton McKinley's starting quarterback. He is a guy that doesn't put up as crazy numbers as you might see from some of the other Stark County QBs, but he also is a guy that can do some serious damage on the ground as well as he can in the air, and he's helping these Bulldogs win games. They want to share the Federal League title last year. How do you see that McKinley offense balancing Rhodes' production with the likes of somebody that I think took the running back position by storm last year in Stark County in Nino Hill, who transferred over and by midseason was already considered one of the top backs in the league? I mean, that's such a fascinating 1-2 punch for the Bulldogs this year, I think.
I mean, Nino Hill is a tremendous running back, and it seems as big of a loss as it was for Alliance, right? Zerbrug was still able to put up great numbers there. And then McKinley was the beneficiary of having one of the top athletes in Northeast Ohio transfer there. He is a Division I recruit. As we know, there was plenty of scouts and coaches there throughout Friday night games last year for Canton McKinley. For McKinley, though, to your point of Rhode and also now Hill, it keeps defenses guessing. You keep the defense on their toes because they can do whatever they want, and a defense is going to have to decide, what do we take away? We know Rhode can beat you through the air and also use his legs. So if you try to take away the running back in Hill, Rhode can beat you in one or two ways. If you try to take Rhode away, you have to make sure you stack that box and really do not let Nino Hill get outside the tackle box and break away as we were accustomed to seeing last year, Mitch. I mean, this is for McKinley, returning Hill, who has experience now under the coaching staff and familiarity with his teammates, with a veteran quarterback in Keaton Rhode. The Bulldogs offense is going to be scary. And I'm really curious to see how teams try to stop it, because you're going to have to take one away and then hope that you can have the other on a bad day, in my opinion. That's one of the reasons why McKinley is atop the Federal League heading into the season in terms of what team you would expect to pick to win the Federal League. Now, obviously, they have to go out there, they have to play their style, and they have to be able to convert on a lot of things. But you talk about a 1-2 punch. It's probably the best 1-2 punch, not only in the Federal League, but here in Northeast Ohio, definitely in Stark County.
Speaking of 1-2 punches, you also have the two backs at Glen Oak. Avante Burt, the senior, is coming back from a third-team All-Ohio finish. He will be matched up with the likes of a junior in Jamar Johnson, who was also able to do some very good things in the backfield for the Golden Eagles. Also, some of the names here that I'm looking at, Zion Culver is a very interesting choice, a sophomore for the Canton South Wildcats. He had 6 rushing touchdowns last year in a game against Sandy Valley. Finished the year with 11 touchdowns, 820 yards. Him and Snyder could do some good things together. And then you also have the likes of a guy like Dorian Pringle, who primarily was a linebacker last year. It was an All-Ohioan at linebacker last year. But now with Wiltrell Hartson graduated, he will be the primary running back for the Tigers. And last year he had 6 rushing touchdowns, to show for it. He's already committed to Bowling Green. He's averaged 5.5 yards per carry, and apparently he's improved his speed in the offseason, which could really help out the Tigers, especially, last year, a lot of their offense just seemed to be get the ball on the ground, get some open field. Teams are going to pay. And, with a guy like Pringle under in the backfield this year, the sky's the limit essentially for Massillon.
Yeah, I also had the luxury of seeing Pringle last year. Mitch, he is also as good as advertised. These players that we're talking about right now, it's tough because there's just a load of talent. And we know Ohio is just so notorious for pumping these high school football players to Division I schools and then making an impact almost immediately. Sometimes you see it on special teams, and sometimes guys go to college, work their tail off in camp, and next thing you know, they're getting valuable playing time when it comes to snaps on the field, either offensively or defensively. Pringle is going to be somebody that teams are going to have to game plan, and probably game plan in terms of double covering to take him out, because you leave him in single coverage, Mitch, even the toughest throws, the balls that you don't think he can go up and get, he will go get, and he will make you pay. And so what that does then is it opens up somebody else for Massillon to step up in the receiving game. Obviously, I'm very excited to see what happens, as it looks like Massillon now is all full steam ahead after some, off the field issues that came up, and Nate Moore now is back at practice with his team. That has to be huge for the Tigers moving forward. The Massillon Tigers, Mitch, are on a quest, not just to continue this streak against their arch rival, the McKinley Bulldogs, but they are trying to get over the hump and win a state championship. It has not been done for a long, long, long time. They have gotten there plenty of times here recently, but they have not been able to finish the job. And so now with Massillon and the players that you see moving into the area to go there, obviously, they are not a private school. They are a public school. They have the talent to do it. Can they finally get over the hump? And this team, year in, year out, that has all this talent, has their goals set on hoisting the Division II state championship trophy. We will see what they do, because, Mitch, they have one of the hardest schedules I have ever seen for a high school football team, really, that I can ever remember. You look at the likes of Valdosta State, a powerhouse in the state of Georgia, coming all the way here to Northeast Ohio to take on the Tigers, I believe, early on in the season at Paul Brown Tiger Stadium. They are going to try to be battle tested and play these tough games. So when they get to the state semifinals or the state championship game, they are ready to rock and roll. And it's been no slight on the schedule they've had. You schedule these games, a couple of years in advance, not really knowing what's going to be there. Obviously, Massillon knows the type of talent they are developing at the younger levels and the youth levels. So I'm excited to see what Massillon does this year, as they will try to get over the hump that they have not been able to get over now for what has seemed like 3-4 straight years.
Massillon, as an independent, they're going to be taking out on a lot of outside competition this year. They do open the season against Valdosta, the all-time winningest program in American history, the all-time winningest football program in high school sports history here in America. Massillon at number 4, and then Glen Oak, they do play in week 2, but then they have a couple of games away from home. Mansfield they'll play Elkhart in week 4, St. Ed's, Middletown, St. John's College, Fitch, and Warren Harding, until you get to that October 21st matchup in Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium against the Canton McKinley Bulldogs, the ultimate high school football rivalry in there. And, just taking a look at some of those other matchups there are very interesting. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see what will be of this upcoming high school football slate. And we're excited to see you guys there. You can see either Mitch or I some of our upcoming scheduled games here. We'll be broadcasting for Big Time Sports here on the airwaves and online. So when we come back, we're going to go over some more topics here on the Big Time Sports podcast show. Been an eventful 24 hours in baseball, particularly for one team. And we'll get into that. We'll get into some other topics here on the show. Stay with us. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Think Ferris. Where you matter.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
Happy Sardiversary from Alt Care. We're celebrating 25 years with our partners in the community. Here's Mike Galena.
SARTA and Alt Care, side by side, both providing a great service to our local community. Where the two connect best is where SARTA is able to get our clients and members to their prescriptions, their health care, all the needs that they have that otherwise they may let go.
Thanks to our community partners as we celebrate SARTA 2-5 at SARTA.
Hey, welcome back here to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell, Mitchell Ballard. Mitch, before we get into our next topic, one of the things I didn't get to in segment one is an unfortunate bit of news that came yesterday out of the North Canton area. The Sanctuary Golf Club is set to close permanently in October after the golfing season ends, after about 20 or so years in operation. It was formerly the Bobolink course. It was acquired by McKinley Development Company in 2001 and has since become the Sanctuary. And it sucks because that's another one of the casualties of golf courses in the area. I mean, we've had Tam O'Shanter and Skyland Pines close in the last couple of years. And I know you're not so much an avid golfer as I am, but I mean, what can you kind of tell me about the Sanctuary if you know it more, if you know that area more than I do?
Well, the Sanctuary got to witness my amazing golf game once or twice that I can remember. A lot of balls that went anywhere but the fairway. But no, to your point, you mentioned Tam O'Shanter, right? That's a golf course that I would drive past almost every day. And it's gone now. It has now been into retail development, grocery stores there, multiple different small businesses, a restaurant drive-through, Jiffy Oil, chain. It's unfortunate to see these golf courses continue to be on the decline when, Mitch, you look back to 2020, that was really all that people could do in terms of what was available to go outside and do during the pandemic besides just hang out in your backyard. And so I think a lot of these places thought like they were on the uprising again. People were picking up golf. I know that's when I really started to get into golf once my baseball career was done. And now for the Sanctuary, or some people knew, the Bobolinks golf course, it's sad. It really is. You don't like to see this happen because it affects multiple people in ways. Obviously, the people that were working there now are in a tough spot, but you also just lose another course that was very nice. It was fun to play at the few times I went there, and it's unfortunate. And really, for any golfer around here that likes to just stay in the area with all the golf courses we have, it just means now it's going to get more crowded at the remaining golf courses around here that are public courses. And so it's unfortunate. And it is a Plain Township staple. That is for sure. I know you have that in your blog. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Does somebody maybe come in and buy it and try to revive it? we'll have to wait and see, or is it going to be on the same path that we have seen some of these other local courses go on, where someone comes and buys it and it turns into anything other than a golf course? It sucks to see. It's that simple. You don't like to see this happen, but we will await and see what happens next after it closes in late October.
Yeah, I posted the thing yesterday, and I saw a bunch of comments on our Facebook post saying that like they were criticizing the course for being particularly expensive for like the value that you're getting when you go play. And I've never played the Sanctuary, and I'm gonna book a tee time there before they do close, because I like to play all the courses in my area as much as I can, and then some more. I'm looking on it right now. I mean, the most expensive one's at 47. That's for 18. 36 for 9 holes, where I'm like, okay, that's where we're getting kind of pushing there. Because I would go over to Wilkshire, and then you get something like $20 to $35 there, or even the Quarry, which is maxing out at around 45 to 50 for 18.
Yeah, the Quarry, Mitch, obviously is known for being one of the more expensive ones, but it's just also just so much different than a lot of the courses around Northeast Ohio to play. So that one kind of makes sense, but you're right. Obviously, they've been, when I say they, I mean the Sanctuary, have been kind of ridiculed by people saying it is too expensive for the quality of golf you're getting there, in terms of how much they upkeep with the greens, the fairways, the tee boxes. But all in all, if you're a golfer, you're going to pay whatever you want to pay to go golf. And sometimes there's just a lot of things going on around Northeast Ohio that kind of leaves that as an option. But if that was, one of the deciding factors between price, and these people weren't making what they were hoping to make as business owners, they were going to keep the prices up that high. And, it's kind of one of the reasons we are at where we're at, to where the Sanctuary will be gone here in just a couple months.
Well, I'm going to say my judgment for when I actually go play the place here whenever I can get out eventually. In the meantime, let's go over to our next topic, because look, sometimes it's just one of those things where you have a stretch of particularly harsh luck, and we saw it start, I think, last week, when we saw some of the moves that the Cleveland Guardians are starting to make ahead of the MLB trade deadline. You go and get a pitcher in Noah Syndergaard for your starting shortstop in Amed Rosario. You then trade one of your one of your most veteran starting pitchers. I don't know if it's your top starting pitcher, one of your most veteran starting pitchers, for a first baseman who's not in the major leagues yet. Then you make a move right in the final minutes of the deadline to be able to send a struggling would-be slugger to Miami for a veteran that you're not even going to play, and an infield prospect that is probably still a couple of seasons away from the major leagues. So then you follow it up by getting no hit by the Houston Astros last night, and one of the most efficient no hitters we've seen in the last 20 or so years. Framber Valdez went 93 pitches, didn't really have any threats throughout the game that would have cost him the no hitter. Maybe that last hit by Cam Gallagher, which we'll talk about in a second. So I want to start with the trade. I want to start with the trades, Mitch. I want to get your thoughts on it, because we didn't talk much about the trades themselves before we went on the air this week. I look at it as, look, it can be very easy to say they're playing for next year. They're kicking the rest of the season, and they're trying to get as much value as they can out of their veterans in exchange for future talent. I'm fine with that. I was fine with the Savali trade. I think this is going to be the highest his value is going to peak for the remainder of how long he would have been with the Guardians had he stayed. And for as far as Rosario goes, look, this is a guy that to me felt like he could play baseball 2 out of the 7 days of the week. So I'm not particularly upset about that. And Syndergaard looked fine Wednesday night against Houston. He looked like he might have had a fresh start in him. Of course, the bullpen then let us down. And the Josh Bell thing, I knew Josh Bell. I think it was smart to just get him before. He wasn't playing bad all season. He had gotten better, but he's not the guy that he was in Pittsburgh. He's not the guy that he was just a few years ago. And if you're going to trade him for a guy that I saw some people debating whether or not this Khalil Watson was a guy that Miami even wanted on the book still. He's only 20 years old. If he can keep developing, he can be a fine player in the infield, even though it feels like we have 6 middle infielders right now. It's just tough, because I know that moves like this can definitely throw the clubhouse for a loop, especially when I kept saying the past week, if we were to trade Savali at this particular moment, I know that Quantrill, Bieber, and McKenzie could come back at some point this season. Probably probably Bieber and Quantrill more than McKenzie. You're basically setting yourself up with Noah Syndergaard, 3 rookies, and then wild cards. That's where I got scared at first. If there's any team that can really work around it, it is the Guardians. And we saw all the bullpen games they peddled out last year into this year. But eventually, Mitch, I fear that luck might run out. And last night was unfortunately for Guardians fans the worst possible outcome you could have had for the moves that came before it. It's just the hardest of luck.
Yeah, starting with Ahmed Rosario, Mitch, he was not going to be the shortstop of the future. Cleveland was going to give him the 1-year deal they gave him in more of a prove it deal. If he proved it, maybe they would have kept him around. He obviously had a very, very bad first half of the season. There's no way around that. One of the worst, if not the worst, defensive shortstops in all Major League Baseball. He could get red hot from the plate, but boy, when he was not red hot, was he ice cold. The Syndergaard thing, I honestly think we are one of the only organizations that can change what a pitcher does to get them back on track. Now, he's never going to be the hard-throwing right-hander he once was when he came up with the New York Mets before he started having injuries. But he did look fine the other night. And really, the only reason he came out of that game is because he took a ball off the leg on a comebacker that it seemed like he was okay, but they told him whether it was out of precaution or whether he actually was in pain. We haven't really gotten clarification. The Savali trade, I actually am all for, because to me, Mitch, this is a guy who has never been able to build off the success he has and continue it over. He's good for about 3 or 4 starts. Then he'll lay a couple bad ones. And we also know he's been hurt at least once out of the past few seasons. So getting a player like they did in the trade from Tampa, including the number 3 prospect already for us in the trade acquisition, number 1 rated first baseman prospect in all baseball, and then trading Josh Bell yesterday kind of shows me that we like this guy. He shows a lot of promise. He's probably going to be up here sooner rather than later. Maybe not this year, maybe so. I don't know, because as much as people want to say the Guardians are waving the white flag, they're not. They're only 2 games back in the division. The Twins didn't do anything at the deadline either.
Right.
So it's going to be a wide open race for the most part. We have a good number of games versus the Twins coming up later in the season. This just isn't a team that's going to be able to compete for the World Series. That's what really it comes down to. And so, yeah, if you get the division title, you can sell a little bit more merchandise. You get 1 or 2 more games guaranteed at Progressive Field because you'll be a division winner. It's just like, as bad as Josh Bell was, and to your point, he had gotten better. That was kind of the move that showed a lot of fans that, yeah, we're going to punt on the season. We might be able to win the division still, but we're not going to get the players that we need to go all in for a World Series run, because we are missing 3 starting pitchers, because guys have had down years like Andres Jimenez at the plate after a stellar season in 2022. This bullpen is bad. And we can say that because we have been so lucky, really since 2015 and 16, Mitch, of having one of the best bullpens in the league. And so we can kind of tell when the bullpen's bad, and they've had a number of games where they've been stellar. But once the injuries started happening to the starting pitching, and you had to start going to those bullpen games, and you have these rookie starters that cannot go deep in ball games, and the bullpen's fatigued, this was expected to happen. You have Karinchak, who was one of your most reliable arms last year, down in AAA. Clase, still been very good, but he has not been what he was last year. And part of that, to me, is the fatigue. He's been used a lot more, right? Trevor Stephan, having to be a setup guy, he is not a setup guy. I think that's pretty obvious now. So between that and the inconsistency from everybody outside of Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor at the plate this year, it's put the Guardians where they're at. 2 games under 500, 2 games out of first place in the American League Central, but also nowhere near the top of some of these other teams in baseball, specifically in the American League. The Rays, the Orioles, the Astros, you name it. Those teams are clear cut better than the Cleveland Guardians in every aspect of baseball. And I think that's why the Guardians kind of punted and looking to set up for next year. And what moves they make, we'll have to wait and see. I do think that the interesting piece with Josh Bell. This is now his 5th team in 4 seasons. He has been traded and signed with multiple teams. You see it sometimes at the trade deadline. Guys get traded. They need to change the scenery. Mitch, maybe he just needs to go back to Pittsburgh, because when Cleveland was in Pittsburgh just a week or 2 weeks ago, it looked like Josh Bell was back. Every time he goes to Pittsburgh, it looks like the Josh Bell that was in Pittsburgh, that was an all-star. But other than that, Mitch, he has been very disappointed everywhere he's went since his days in Pittsburgh. And so now you'll wait and see. The Marlins made some moves to where it's like, oh, okay, they're going all in. It seems like not all in, but they're going for it to see how much longer they can last. So we'll wait and see. There was a number of trades made yesterday, but to your point, then the moves the Guardians made, that was the worst possible outcome last night in Houston, getting no hit and a 2-0 loss on a 93 pitch effort from Framber Valdez. And now, Mitch, your fun fact of the day, the Guardians now account for 25% of all no-hitters thrown in Major League Baseball since 2001. They also now have the longest drought out of any team in Major League Baseball since the last no-hitter. Not even perfect game, no-hitter thrown. And it is just unfortunate. Obviously, no-hitters are hard, but it's like, my gosh, what do we have to do? The pitching we have pumped out over the years, the Kluber, the Salazar, the Carrasco, you name these guys. How have we not been able to get one? And then how are we the ones getting no hit the most with some of the talent we've had in the past couple of years? It's just a very puzzling situation.
A number of things. Number one, Carlos Carrasco was 1 pitch away just a few years ago back in Tampa. That was the most frustrating radio listen of my lifetime as a fan. A lot of those no-hitters did account for 2021, because that was the weird year when it was the most. We think the Guardians offense is bad now. That offense was atrocious that season. I went to like multiple games where they got no hit, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? But yeah, and another thing that I wanted to bring up too was, I don't know if you saw this. I feel like you had to have. I sent it to you for sure, so you had to have seen this. This was right after the game on Monday night, that the Syndergaard game, which they came back and lost. This, Mitch, was something that when I first heard it live, I knew it was going to be a story for the next day. And I was right. It was the reaction that Guardians manager Terry Francona had right after the game, where, look, in the 9th inning of that contest, the bases were loaded. It was 7-2, so it's probably not going to be a Guardians rally all-time comeback and win. That being said, Zach Meisel of The Athletic asked Francona a question regarding Straw being at bat in that situation. And Straw, for some reason, whatever reason, this 9-hole hitter, 8-hole hitter, whatever he is, always finds himself in these late game scenarios at bat. So he asked him this question.
Any thoughts of hitting for Straw?
No, we didn't. Who would you hit?
Fry, Freeman, Gonzalez.
Why though? I mean, we're trying to get a base runner. We're not trying to get a home run there. We're down 5 at the time. We need a base runner. You know, you could ask all you want. I don't think that was the right thing to do.
Yeah. So, and look, I understand that with this thing here. Let me just turn this off. I understand the thinking of, you're just trying to keep advancing the base runners to keep building upon a big base situation, a bases loaded situation. That being said, you're not trying for a home run as your best possible outcome in an at bat. And I'm not saying David Fry is going to be the example, or Oscar Gonzalez is going to be the key difference. Although Oscar showed signs of power last season, and Fry is one of the hotter hitting catchers in the league, let alone your team this year. When I heard that, I was like, okay, I love Francona. I think he is outside of Mike Hargrove, Terry Francona, Boudreaux. Those are the three. Those are the 3 great Cleveland Indians Guardians managers. And he arguably is the most, he is the most successful out of all of them. He's won multiple World Series championships. He's done pretty much everything as a manager. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame one day. I got so frustrated when I heard that, and but at the same time, I'm trying to keep my wits about me and understand that this man has forgotten more about baseball than we'll probably ever learn in our lifetime. And I asked some fans on Twitter today, or on X, excuse me, who do you, if you're going to move on from Francona this year, and I'm not saying the Guardians are going to do that. I highly doubt they're going to do that unless it's for Francona's own choice. If you're doing that, who are you replacing him with right now that's going to instantly make this team better, or even keep the team at the same level? There's very few guys like that. I just got so frustrated when you hear an answer like that, especially because if it was an asinine question that Meisel asked, I'd be like, all right, whatever. But Meisel's one of the top baseball writers in our area, and he asked a decent enough question to be like, hey, maybe we could have substituted for a guy who has 0 home runs in the season, not the greatest hitter in the Guardians lineup. In fact, maybe the worst of the entire roster.
Yeah, no, it was a fair question. I think Tito is very frustrated, obviously, with where this team is at off of last year and the moves they made in the offseason, which we thought made the team better to build off the 2022 Central Division title and the American League Division Series Game 5 loser. I think it was the first time I was ever like, oh, is this maybe the start of get off my lawn guy? I think that's kind of where I was, because you've never seen that for the most part from Tito. But then, Mitch, I thought it was very interesting, the lineup the next day, because he put all 3 of those players in the starting lineup. And then what did that team do? They got no hit. So is it a point? Maybe. I agree with you. You're not trying to hit a home run there. Well, if the bases are loaded and you hit a home run, you're one more swing away from tying that game up.
Yeah.
And you're also rolling it back to the top of your lineup. Yes, Miles Straw, it seems like every single time you watch a Guardians game is the guy up with runners in scoring position and 2 outs in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning. Every time, I swear. I don't get how it works out that way. But it's almost never the guys you want in Kwan, Ramirez, or Naylor. But Terry played him the next day, and they didn't even get a hit. So the lineup's just inconsistent. That's all it is, right? Straw is in the lineup because of the defense, Mitch. We've seen a number of plays from him this season, and he has a phenomenal arm, the ability to track down balls in the outfield, in center field, left center, right center, wherever it may be. To me, you can get away with it, where last year you had that as well as a defensive catcher, and neither could hit. You were giving 2 automatic outs in the lineup. I wish Miles Straw could bunt, but he can't, because if he could bunt, maybe he'd have a little bit of higher average. Maybe he'd be on base a little more. I don't know. But this team is just inconsistent. Everybody is. I mean, Jose Ramirez will be red hot, and I'm just patiently waiting. It looked like against the Royals last week in Cleveland, he was back. He had the 2-homer game. Then in Chicago, he had the 2-homer game. And we're so accustomed to seeing Jose kind of take off in the month of August and later down the stretch in September to where he carries the team sometimes. But it also looks like other times he's trying to do too much because he knows the guys behind me outside of Josh Naylor right now are providing nothing. It's a tough spot to be in. I don't know what to think about this team. And what really sucks is, as bad as we want to bash them, Mitch, they are still in the divisional race. It's mind-boggling to me how bad the Central Division is. But at the same time, I'm tired of all the crap the Central Division is getting, because people are acting like everybody else in baseball is so good. Entering last night, the Guardians were only 6 wins behind the Texas Rangers, who were leading the American League West. Like, it's not that drastic. You're literally one good week of baseball away, and the Texas Rangers being one bad week of baseball away from completely flipping spots in the standings of who the number 2 seed in the American League would be. And so, yes, the American League, the East is loaded, right? Baltimore 66 wins. The West 61 wins then for their Rangers and Astros. Rangers with a half-game lead, but you're still only the Twins now. Obviously, the Guardians 9 wins behind, but you were still only 6 wins going to Houston behind the Texas Rangers to catch them for that record. It's kind of crazy. And then the National League Central is, let's stop acting like they're much, much better than the American League Central. The Reds lead that division with 59 wins. That's 6 more wins than Cleveland as we sit here recording today.
Yeah, I just think Cincinnati is more, they're definitely a more exciting team to watch than Cleveland is right now. They're a better team on the road. They have what is it here? 535 runs scored this year compared to the Guardians 444. As it stands, this is fascinating. Cleveland has the exact same amount of, Guardians have the exact same amount of runs scored as they do given up this year. I just saw that on the numbers. Yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, it's a case of it just feels weaker. Like I don't see any of these teams in the Central beating any of the teams in America. I don't see them beating any of the teams in the National League that are atop their respective divisions right now. And even Nightingale had a thing. It says, "Congrats to the Twins who clinched the title. They're barely over 500, 2 games ahead of the Guardians, but they were the only team in the area AL Central who didn't sell at the deadline. They just stayed pat and watched everyone get worse." Okay, that's again. If it had been like even 6 or 7 games back, I'd have been like, okay, he's making sense. Still 2 games back. They play Minnesota here in just what is it, a few weeks, if that. Yeah. So if we get some wins against them, then anything can happen, and it's going to be very difficult. But at the same time, things can change, and it's it just feels like a season where you're going to be expecting much at this point. And maybe last year was just a case of playing above expectations, and we just have to kind of recognize that and play for next year. Speaking of next year, we'll talk about one team on the other side of this break that apparently will be playing for 2 years from now, according to a guy that they just traded. We'll also get into some Brown stuff here at the end of the show. Stay tuned right after this.
Vive Auto Sales, located on West High Avenue in New Philadelphia and Cleveland Avenue in Canton, is a used car dealership committed to getting financing for everyone. We give every customer that walks in our showrooms a prime buying experience, no matter their credit score or financial situation. Current inventory can be viewed at www.wefinancenow.com. Check out our Facebook pages for the most up-to-date information about upcoming events and promotions happening at Vive Auto Sales.
Are you trying to increase your speed, quickness, vertical leap, and agility? If so, NST Sports Performance is for you. NST trains athletes ages 5 through pro. NST designs each program specific to the athlete's needs, goals, and sports. For more, visit nstsports.com. Locations in North Canton and New Philadelphia. It's nstsports.com.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast show. We're going more into the MLB trade deadline as it is officially passed yesterday at 6 p.m. I got to get this out of you, Mitch. Which one did you prefer, the current trade deadline system or the one we used to have where it would always end in the middle of the afternoon on what was it, August 1st, or was it earlier then? Yeah, okay. Which one do you prefer? Because I kind of feel like it going into the wee hours of the afternoon was always more, I don't know, it felt more exciting because once you're getting close to game times, typically among the major league level, it kind of feels like it's taking away from the actual excitement of it. Whereas in the middle of the day, you're kind of like, whether you're at school or you're at work, you're kind of like keeping tabs on everything and trying to see if there are any big moves being made.
I think I like this one a little bit more because of the format of which baseball is currently in with the postseason, because now more teams are looking to be buyers instead of sellers, obviously with 3 wild card teams and 3 division winners. So you're talking about 12 total playoff teams. It also, Mitch, allows for the chaos a little bit more because to your point, the later it is, it gets closer to game time. But yesterday, Mitch, the Guardians put out their lineup for the game and Josh Bell was in the lineup.
Yes.
Then they traded him.
Yes.
And I also think that the extra couple hours does make a difference, but there were so many moves that we found out about after 6 o'clock that just happened right at the buzzer with teams doing paperwork. I think I like this better, but it's because of the bigger playoff format. I think that is really why I like it better, because typically when it was just the 3 division winners and 1 wild card, there was more sellers than there were buyers. I also feel like we saw a lot more trades with bigger name players this deadline than we kind of have in years past. That's not to say it wasn't as good of a deadline. Obviously, one of my favorite deadlines, 2016, when the then Indians acquired Andrew Miller, and I was at the game that night when they acquired him, and then it was, oh my gosh, they're going to go get Jonathan Lucroy. Then he declined it and went to Texas and absolutely sucked and was out of the league within like 2 years. To me, this is more suspenseful, but it also definitely has something attached to it because you were talking about the likes of, is Shohei Ohtani going to get traded? Then the White Sox having a fire sale out of nowhere, trading 2 of their top starting pitchers. And so just the craziness that ensued. You had a team that in the offseason looked like they were going for it, and then they were the biggest seller yesterday, or really in the past 5 days in the New York Mets. I mean, my goodness, this trade deadline, there were moves that I was going through today, Mitch, that I still hadn't even been told about. The Cardinals selling, like that was a crazy one. Also, because I may or may not have put a future on them to win the World Series. So it just one hurt. The Blue Jays acquiring Paul DeJong from the Cardinals. The Phillies getting Michael Lorenzen from the Tigers. That's one that's not being talked about. Then you keep scrolling down the trade recap on MLB.com. The Padres acquired Rich Hill and Ji-Man Choi from the Pirates. I feel like that's what I had no idea about. There was other trades that you saw. You're like, oh, okay, that could help. You know, that's interesting. The Diamondbacks and Mariners made a trade for Paul Sewald, which actually had Northeast Ohio native Dominic Canzone, a Walsh Jesuit product, an Ohio State product, traded to Seattle in that deal. So that was kind of cool to see that somebody I played against growing up here in Northeast Ohio when I was younger. But there was a flurry of moves, I feel like, that came in at the buzzer that typically we never saw with that earlier trade deadline. I believe it was 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
A couple of teams I'm surprised. I wasn't surprised to be sellers. One of them was the White Sox. They didn't move on from Dylan Cease though, which I found interesting. I thought he would have had the highest value of any of the moves that were to be made. Was who was it that was supposed to be traded to Los Angeles? That was Detroit. That was the guy from Detroit who Eduardo Rodriguez, who had 10 teams on his no trade list, and the Dodgers were one of them. First place, Los Angeles Dodgers. Man really likes Detroit, I guess. The Padres being buyers kind of surprised me a little bit, just because they're 8.5 games back of the Dodgers. They're 4th place in the West. I know that you can maybe even get a chance at a wild card spot here, and currently they are they're 5 games back of the last wild card spot. That seems like an investment to not work out, probably, unless they go on an unbelievable hot streak here. It's just one of those things where there were more teams I was surprised were buyers this deadline than they were sellers, or even teams that didn't make many moves. We talked about the Ohtani thing. I'm still surprised that the Angels didn't try to keep or try to get some value out of him, some significant value in what would be the farm system, probably. And they're just going to ride it out the rest of the year, try to wiggle their way into a playoff spot. Right now they're not going to win the AL West, that's for sure, and they're 3 games back of the Blue Jays for the final wild card spot. Unless they go on a tear here, that's going to be feel like a waste. And then Otani is going to probably sign somewhere else in the offseason.
While I agree with you that I think it would have been smart to probably trade Otani, as it looks like he's not going to stay there. I think the moves they made were trying to show him, hey, we are trying to still go for it this year with you here. We are trying to satisfy you and make some moves that will take a little bit of a load off your plate. I mean, we know the pitching in Los Angeles outside of Otani is just dreadful for the Angels, but I think that was a desperate move as well. I think the desperate moves made were by the Angels getting rid of some top prospects and now go back to Chicago. So as Cleveland fans, you have to hope that that was a giant miss on the scouting from Chicago scouts. And then the Padres were buyers. The Padres have been probably the second biggest disappointment in baseball this year, behind the New York Mets. Mets had no choice but to be sellers. They're 6 games under 500. They're 7 back in the wild card. They're not going to win the National League West. I believe they're 18 games back or something crazy like that, because you have the Braves in that division. But the Padres, Mitch, when at all this year have they given anybody a reason to be like, oh, that's the team that should be that good because of all the big names? They're just a team with names. That's all they are. They're not a good baseball team. Their pitching has Blake Snell, who won a Cy Young, 2019, I believe, and has not been good since he went there. Yu Darvish, still a formidable name and formidable pitcher as well, but obviously older. And you have all these electrifying players: Juan Soto, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis. It's like, how are they where they're at? How are the Padres 53 and 55? They have the same record as the Guardians. That team versus the Guardians on paper should be nowhere near the same record with the Guardians, yet they have not been able to put it together. This, to me, was a desperate move, trying to show them, hey, fans, still come out here and pack the ballpark. We're going to go for it. They have not once given me any reason to hope to believe they can be a playoff team this year. And the other surprising move, Mitch, this is a team that's 1 game back in the wild card. This is a team that sits 3rd place in their division. The Arizona Diamondbacks made a trade yesterday. They gave up left-handed pitcher Andrew Chafin to the Brewers. He has not been what was expected or what he once was. 4.9 ERA, 8 saves, and 34 1/3 innings this season. That, to me, though, was a bizarre move, because that is a team that is in a better position than Cleveland. That is a team that you would have thought would be potential buyers, because they're still in the thick of things. 1 game out of the wild card, that's literally 1 day of baseball with everybody playing to switch spots and be in a wild card position. Just a very weird move. But then they went and got Paul Sewald from the Mariners, so maybe they thought that was an upgrade. I was kind of caught off guard by that one. I really was. He was still owed $6.23 million. They got a 28-year-old righty who has posted a 3.69 ERA and 66 appearances over the past 2 seasons. That ERA, though, up this year. A number of trades took place, but I think I know what you want to talk about here, because there were a couple trades that involved the same team. And boy, has it created drama central in probably the best market you would ever want it to be drama central in New York City.
Before we get to that, there's one more team I wanted to mention here. The Cubs going all in on the likes of like Bellinger and all them, because they're 3.5 back in the wild card. They're the one team that I'm like, okay, because it's like, on the one side, it's Arizona, where you're still very much in contention for a wild card, even though you're 3rd in the NL West. San Diego, what are you doing? Cubs right in the middle of that. Let's talk about the New York Metropolitans, because this team went into the start of this season thinking highest payroll in baseball, 2 former Cy Young Award winners who are approaching 40. We've got this in the bag. And then Edwin Diaz gets hurt, and then they keep losing. More guys get hurt. And by this trade deadline, both of your top starting pitchers are gone. Justin Verlander is back in Houston, because of course he is. This team is going to, the ALCS is going to run through Texas this year. I'm almost certain of it, if the standings work that way out, because like, I don't know if Texas and Houston would face off in the wild card at some point. But we're gonna have to deal with that now. Whatever, sure, why not? And then Max Scherzer goes to the other Texas team, to the Rangers. And in his opening press conference with the Rangers, this I believe it was yesterday, he didn't expect to get traded. Obviously, when you start the season, you don't expect it to go so south that you're getting dealt by August. But he found out that the Mets, this is according to Scherzer, this is Scherzer's account, were shifting their focus to 2025, not 25 and beyond, which was after his contract was set to expire. It says here the 3-time Cy Young Award winner, according to ESPN, waived his no trade clause to be dealt to Texas after conversations with Mets general manager Billy Epler and owner Steve Cohen following his final start for the Mets last Friday. He said, quote, Epler's answer was that the team is now kind of shifting vision and that they're looking to compete now for 2025 and 26, and that 2024, that it was not going to be a reload situation in New York and that it was going to be more of a transition in 2024, unquote. He talked with Epler. He went to Cohen, and Cohen had previously been saying, oh, we're still trying to compete. Now it's kind of like, yeah, we're just trying to boot it to not even next year, 2025. So like, how do you go as a Mets fan going from like, this team is going to capitalize off of winning 100 games last year, getting into the playoffs again, getting upset by an upstart Padres team that got hot at the right time. And then now you're what, 18 to 24 months away from being a serious contender again? That's got to be a hard, truth or hard future.
Keep in mind the year he said, right? 2025, allegedly, per Max Scherzer, the ultimate bag getter in baseball, perhaps of all time, because he's still being paid by 3 franchises now, which is absolutely incredible. So, I mean, big props to him. He is absolutely getting the bag from the Nationals, still the Mets, and now the Rangers. Verlander Mitch was a 2-year deal, I believe, for $86.6 million, meaning he would have played 23 and 24 and been done. But what this did allow the Mets to do is unload a little bit of money off the books. Obviously, those were 2 just asinine contracts, in my opinion, given the age of these pitchers. Pete Alonso is an unrestricted free agent in 2025. That could be why they said they're pointing their attention to 25, because if they lose Pete Alonso in free agency, which they very well could, because I know a team that really would like a first baseman and that will pay a lot of money for him, and it's the team that is your neighbor in the New York Yankees, they are going to have money to sign Pete Alonso. As it stands right now, he is the number 9 first baseman in terms of contract. 6th biggest Met to take a hit for a contract, if that makes sense. So he's the 6th highest paid New York Met. You already have the number 1 paid shortstop in baseball, the number 1 paid Met, and the number 10 highest paid player in baseball in Francisco Lindor. There is no cap hit. And I always thought it was going to be the Padres we saw blink first when they started making all these wild acquisitions, paying out all this money. But maybe it's the Mets. Maybe Cohen is a little too in over his head here. We know he has money, but when you talk about Alonso, who's 28 years old, 2 more years, he'll be approaching 31, given where his birthday is, because he's 28 and 245 days old as it sits right now. They weren't going anywhere this year, and it may have simply been what I'm kind of alluding to here. They have to keep Pete Alonso, or else Mitch, that team, unless some of these prospects they got back pan out, but we know it was always the Cubs that are cursed. It's us that are cursed. Next up on that list is the New York Mets, given their epic collapses they've always had. This is going to get really interesting, especially if next year they suck and Pete Alonso is not happy. You and I both know a team will come and offer the money. The Mets will probably be willing to pay him, unless they're going to make him one of the top 10 highest paid players in baseball, in which he is a power threat. He is an all-star, obviously a home run derby participant year in, year out, but teams might let the Mets overspend to keep him if it means it's going to handicap them again, kind of like it handicapped them this year with going out getting 2 old pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I'm going to give the Mets some benefit of the doubt and look at 2 things. Number 1, you have the crop of free agent pitchers next year that the Mets could actually invest in and try to make squeeze some more talent out of them. You have guys like Snell becoming a free agent after this year from San Diego. You have Urias, Nola, Giolito, and of course Shohei Ohtani. And if you have the highest payroll in baseball, you can afford to pay somebody $500+ million should you choose to do so. You also have guys in the farm system that could be a potential to do some good. For example, Luis Angel Acuna, I believe that is Robert's brother, his brother. Yes. That's actually playing very well in Double A Frisco this year. He was 315, 25 doubles, 7 home runs, 51 RBIs, 42 stolen bases. I did see yesterday somebody posted, I think it was it was one of the Cleveland pages here, if I can bring up real quickly, something about sports CLE. It was said that the Guardians, I believe, in the MLB prospect rankings, got a higher rated prospect in Khalil Watson than they did than the Mets did in trading Verlander. That was the other potential thing over there. But I that was more so like, I think he was higher on the Mets scale than Watson was on the Marlins scale, and Watson's still pretty young. But the Mets farm system right now isn't looking too terrible to potentially bring up some serious names here in the next couple of months. But yeah, when you hear something like that, it's like, oh, we were supposed to compete. Now where are we? And again, big turnarounds can happen. So time is going to tell.
When it comes, just out of curiosity, I pulled up the free agents for next year. Ohtani, obviously, number one. There's no doubt about that. I mean, he is going to probably get the biggest contract in American sports we've ever seen. I would be shocked if he doesn't, unless he would just take a simple one-year deal somewhere. After that, Mitch, the starting pitcher market is cool. Some names, but
it's not long term.
It's
unless Ohtani.
They're going to be in the same spot they were in, because Clayton Kershaw's on the list. He's obviously getting nothing but older. Marcus Stroman, who is 32 and a half years old, obviously getting up there. Are they going to go after him again? Because he was a Met at one time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I mean, like Charlie Morton, he's 39.9 Spotrac. Yeah, Giolito, Adam Wainwright. I mean, these names are
Jordan Montgomery.
They might be pushing back to where they just were this year. And I said it when it happened this year. It could work, but typically players don't get better with age when they hit that 30 to 32 mark, right? Especially pitchers that have logged the innings those Scherzer and Verlander had. I really, really hope, though, Mitch, that we get, whether it's the Guardians or not, I hope the Twins go on a tear and they can overtake the American League West, and they somehow clinch the second best record in the American League. And I hope it is a Rangers versus Astros wild card series, and it's Scherzer versus Verlander game 1. And it would be so worth it to watch that game and just see Mets fans sitting there sulking, realize we had both those guys. And where are we? Oh, we're on our couch watching because we went the opposite way where we should have gone this year, which was up.
Yeah, I guess it would be a division series match. Shoot. I wanted the ALCS to be like that.
It could, but remember, the top 2 division winners in terms of record get a bye.
Yeah.
Next division winner, which as it sits now would be the Central, will play the worst wild card team, and the 2 wild card teams then play.
Right.
So then, I mean, there's a chance we see a Astros Rangers wild card division series, ALCS. I'm all for it, though.
Because the Orioles are tied for the top record in the American League right now, so they'd be number 1. Texas would be number 2. Twins would be 3. So then, yes, okay, yeah. I just want to make sure with that. Okay, so we got that all settled. That's all we got for the trade deadline talk. It's passed. We're done with it. The final 2 months of the season are up on us. Let's hope they're as exciting as the first couple of months are. So we'll come back. We'll be talking about the Hall of Fame game here coming up right after this. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Think Ferris. Where you matter.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partner with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
Happy Sardiversary from iCan Housing. We're celebrating 25 years with our partners in the community. Here's Keith Bialotta and Deanna Stokes-Ellis.
SARTA is important to the workforce development team at iCan Housing, not only to get those individuals coming from homelessness to getting them back into the workforce, but also
to stabilize their housing, to assist with childcare, and utilize community resources.
Thanks to our community partners as we celebrate SARTA 2.5 at SARTA.
Back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, I have to finish the Immaculate Grid here in just a bit, but I'm going to do the show while doing so, and I'm going to multitask at the same time. I have developed a problem, Mitch, with this game, and I'm just trying to settle it before it gets worse. But in the meantime, let's talk about this Hall of Fame game matchup that's coming up, because really, it's about what I expected. It's about what I expected between the Browns and the Jets. Many of the stars are not going to be playing in Tom Benson this weekend. They announced yesterday Zach Wilson's going to start for the Jets. And what was it? The name I'm missing, Josh
Mond.
Mond. Kellen Mond, excuse me, will be starting for the Browns this week. That's about right. It's about what I expected. No Deshaun Watson, no Aaron Rodgers, but still gonna be an exciting weekend, and it's gonna be a very interesting weekend, man, because it's one of the rare times in our lives we're gonna be having a lot of Browns fans christening a former player of theirs to getting his bust and getting into the Hall of Fame for the first time. I don't know if we've had in our lifetime a mainly Browns player be inducted.
Not that I can remember. I know I was at a Browns game for Gene Hickerson, the offensive line. That was the Ring of Honor there. I don't remember in our lifetime, Mitch, a Cleveland Brown being inducted. And so that's why this is really special, I think, for us Cleveland fans. Obviously, we went through a lot since the team has been brought back in our lifetime. We often get ridiculed for it, knowing that we get excited over an offensive lineman. Typically, everybody else has been able to talk about their wide receivers, their quarterbacks, running backs, whatever. No, here in Cleveland for a long period of time, we were excited about three players: a offensive lineman, a kicker, and a kick returner. And so it is really cool, though. And not only that, and obviously you can't plan it the way it was planned, but now to be able to honor Jim Brown after his passing earlier this year with the Browns in the Hall of Fame game and Joe Thomas going in, it's about as perfect as you could hope for as the Cleveland Browns organization, as a member of the Cleveland Browns, any former Cleveland Brown, and us Browns fans. It is going to be really cool now for one of the first times, Mitch, in my lifetime. When you're around Canton, Ohio during this week, you see football jerseys everywhere. And typically, Pittsburgh Steelers fans are always here because they have a number of guys that have always gotten into the Hall of Fame. But I'm expecting now for the first time, Mitch, there's actually going to be a lot of orange here because the Browns are playing, because of Joe Thomas, and because we're an hour away from where the Browns play. This is a Cleveland Browns town. I'm very interested to see what this is like. I am very excited for Joe Thomas's Hall of Fame speech. I want to know if he's going to try to name every quarterback he ever blocked for. I think that would be amazing. It would also, that alone would probably take him over the limit they try to keep the Hall of Famers to in their speech. Totally worth it. But better yet, this is the last week, Mitch, without football until February. We're so back. We are so back.
It's a good time. It's a good time to be back into the NFL, back into college here, just a couple of weeks in high school, obviously very soon. And yeah, it's going to be a good one here, especially with a lot of the renovations that are being made around Hall of Fame Village, a lot of the amenities that we've been seeing around there lately. And, the community is obviously doing what it can to kind of support a lot of the incoming names in the NFL and former names. I was passing by the Mission Barbecue the other day, and they had those 3 little statuettes outside the restaurant for former Browns players, including Joe Thomas. But yeah, you mentioned it, Thomas. Any team would have been excited for an offensive lineman like that to be playing in over 10,000 consecutive snaps, to be playing for 10 years straight, always been one of the most reliable namesakes on your offense, and a guy who can protect the quarterback as best he can, even though the quarterbacks he were protecting weren't holding up their end of the bargain per se. He was always there to provide that service to the Browns offense, and just to provide a service to Browns fandom in general, because he is one of the most beloved Browns players we have had in the last 20 years, if not of all time. It's a guy that was very nice to the community of Cleveland, was accepted almost immediately coming out from Wisconsin, excuse me. And a guy who was just able to build something here that people can still relish in. And now he's doing his stuff in broadcasting, and we've had him back here for a couple of Browns games. Very good to see him be able to develop that sort of relationship with the city, to where if they put out a thing of him outside whatever the new Brown Stadium will be here in the future, I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Oh, I think they have to. I mean, you're talking about a record which in which the world we live in terms of football and how violent it is and how much more science we have, there's records are made to be broken, right? There's very few records, Mitch, that I think in our lifetime we're going to see broken. Obviously, with LeBron James still playing basketball, I don't think we'll ever see anyone come close to breaking the all-time scoring record. With how violent football is, I don't know if we're ever going to see somebody come close to the consecutive snaps streak that Joe Thomas set. He also was always a bright spot for us during some horrible years in terms of success. And he always gave you everything he had. I mean, he played through multiple injuries to keep that streak going. That was something personal to him, to always try to prove, like, you have to be tough to play. You have to be willing to come to work and get your nose dirty and get hurt. And he was the epitome of what you want your football team to be: a hard-working player that gives you everything he has. And ultimately, Mitch, that streak would have continued if it wasn't for just a freak of nature injury when he blew out his tricep going for a block. And so now he gets rewarded, which is the highest honor you can have as a football player, being immortalized in the Pro Football Hall of Fame here in Canton, Ohio. It is so well deserved for Joe Thomas. The Browns organization, obviously, everybody will be here since they're playing in the game, but also because the Haslams were the owners when Thomas ended his career here in Cleveland. And I also will always never forget 2 things. One, him turning down a chance at a Super Bowl when the Broncos wanted to trade for him to go block for Peyton Manning. He said no. And also, people often forget he is the oldest offensive lineman of all time. When there was that misplayed graphic by, I believe, Fox one day, where it was supposed to be like longest tenured, instead of said oldest offensive lineman, or first ever offensive lineman in the history of football. So I do expect Joe Thomas to allude to either that or allude to all the quarterbacks he blocked for in his Hall of Fame speech.
I can't even find the freaking thing, man. I thought Awful Announcement had something up there, but yeah, it is an unbelievable career that is going to be christened with a gold jacket and a bust here in a couple of days on Saturday. Outside of Thomas, who do you think is going to get the biggest pop in these inductions? Because there's a number of guys that were very noted in the 2000s and beyond, or the 2010s and beyond, but nobody with like not ones with like serious connections to Northeast Ohio or anything like that, but there are going to be a number of fans coming in from around the country. I mean, is it going to be one of the modern guys like Darrelle Revis or DeMarcus Ware, or is it going to be, one of these guys that kind of had to wait for a long time? You have the likes of Chuck Howley, Rondé Barber in there, Don Coryell, the late Don Coryell, whose offense kind of changed the entire Chargers system. Ken Riley, Zach Thomas also in there. Zach Thomas is an interesting one for Miami.
I think it's going to be Darrelle Revis just because the following the Jets are going to have here with not only him,
True.
but
Yep.
Flacco getting in. If it's not him, I think it's Rondé Barber. I think a lot of people think that this is very overdue for Barber to get into the Hall of Fame. Obviously, a tremendous career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, very deserving. I just think the coolest part of this all, Mitch, is growing up, us both being close to the Hall of Fame, never really appreciated it and never really knew all the guys going in. But over the past few years, we had guys inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame that you and I watched on television in person at games in Cleveland. And now we are in the era where outside the senior nominees, like you mentioned, Coryell and Ken Riley and Chuck Howley, I remember watching DeMarcus Ware for the Dallas Cowboys. I remember the tail end of Rondé Barber. And I sure remember Revis Island. And I sure remember when what was it, the Jets or was the Eagles that signed Revis and Asamoah, and they were supposed to be the greatest defense ever, and they just were not anything special whatsoever. But I think that's the coolest part about this now is that you and I both, and a lot of our listeners out there for the most part and viewers, can remember watching most of these Hall of Famers being inducted. And it started a few years ago with like Brett Favre and Kurt Warner into Randy Moss, Palomalu, Urlacher, Ray Lewis. The list goes on and on and on. I know I'm missing Peyton Manning. But I think that's the coolest part now is I think I took the Hall of Fame for granted being from here. I now understand how big of a deal it is to everybody outside of Canton, Ohio that loves football. And now you get to celebrate and bask in it. And you never know who you're going to run into in Canton, Ohio this week. That's for sure. And if you're planning on coming to Canton, Ohio for anything other than the Hall of Fame, just don't, because the traffic is insane. My 9-minute drive to work turns into about a 25-minute drive because I have to go past the hotel the players stay at. And everybody just thinks they can walk in there. No, there's giant gates. You can't get into the hotel where the Hall of Famers are. So don't try it. I've seen it now for my entire life. And don't make my 9-minute commute to work longer than it needs to be. Please and thank you.
Oh boy. So I'm not even going to make it into the city until Saturday, and I'm going to try and like wiggle my way into the Hall of Fame festivities. I mean, I was looking at stuff next year. There's a lot of names that are going to be on the ballot for this upcoming class of 2024, and this is just the modern players. I'm not even talking about the senior players, which we'll get to in a second. Julius Peppers and Antonio Gates are probably the ones that are like going to be first ballot ones. Those are the guys who revolutionary at their positions each. Other guys who are going to be on the list. I mean, Phil Dawson is going to be his first year eligible. That could be an interesting one because kickers have gotten more respect out of the Hall of Fame in the last couple of years. I mean, we know Adam Vinatieri is going to make it eventually. But Dawson played for so many years and was a very efficient kicker, just didn't play for a lot of contending teams per se. Also along the likes of the ones that are probably going to be among the serious mix. Eric Berry is in there, Haloti Ngata, Jamal Charles, Brandon Marshall. But I still think that Gates and Peppers are the two that are going to be the ones that get in, and then eventually Dawson with time. As far as the senior class, look, I talked about with someone else the other day. Two notable Browns names were on the original short list of 60 names. It's now down to 24. They didn't make it. One is Clay Matthews. Unfortunately, again, this campaign to get him in just keeps falling short to a point where I feel like it's going to become a post-mortem, a posthumous induction, the likes of Ken Stabler, for example. That being said, and then the other one's Art Modell, which I'm fine with. It's like whatever. I'm not the person that's like, oh, Art Modell should never belong in the Hall of Fame, because the guy did have a long tenure as an executive, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, there's a big blot on that quilt of a career. So I'm fine with that. But as far as the senior nominees for next year, you have Ken Anderson on the list, former Bengals quarterback. That's a guy I think you could make a case to get in, especially because there's not a lot of primary Bengals players in the Hall of Fame to begin with. Roger Craig, maybe the most underrated player in pro football history, won 3 Super Bowls with the 49ers, was a very good rusher and receiver for a number of teams. Randy Gradishar, former Ohio State linebacker, was also part of the Orange Crush defense of the 70s for the Denver Broncos, as a former defensive player of the year. Sterling Sharp was on his way to the Hall of Fame before he got cut down with an injury. And we're seeing players now with particularly shorter NFL careers getting into the Hall of Fame. We've seen the likes of Terrell Davis get in the past couple of years after only playing 6 or 7 years. Zach Thomas didn't play very long. Tony Baselli didn't play very long. Calvin Johnson didn't play very long. And understandably, those guys were like from day one tops of their position. You can make a case that Sterling was the best wide receiver outside of Donald Driver that Brett Favre ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sterling Sharp should be at the top of this list, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, you look, 5 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros during his 7-year career with Green Bay that was cut short due to injury, 18 touchdowns in his final season, which now is 3rd best in league history. So you're talking about a guy who still holds a number of records, both in franchise history for the Packers and also NFL history. 8,134 yards and 65 touchdowns, Mitch. Like, to me, when you look at that and realize it was cut short, and you look at some of the other decisions that have been made in terms of players getting into senior finalist or, the modern day finalist, Sterling Sharp absolutely has an argument to get in there and be with his brother, Shannon Sharp.
That's true. And then coaches and contributors, you have Tom Coughlin. He'll get in eventually, maybe so this year after winning 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. Mike Holmgren, he'll probably take some time. He won the Super. No. Look, is this because of his executive tenure with Cleveland, or is this just for okay?
Well, he should be held responsible for that absolute dumpster fire that he did here in Cleveland, collecting checks and doing nothing to make this team better.
Look, as if he's the first ever former coach or player to collect checks as an executive.
Pat Shurmur. Come on.
That's, Mike Holmgren's arguably the guy who only head coach who was able to settle the bucking Bronco that was Brett Favre for his entire career. It doesn't matter. Robert Kraft, of course, he'll get in. Dan Reeves, the late Dan Reeves. You can make a case, even though he never won a Super Bowl as a coach, he won it as a player, I believe. Art Rooney Jr., Steelers exec, why not? And then Marty Schottenheimer, the late Marty Schottenheimer. I mean, that's an interesting study because the man just couldn't get it done in the playoffs, but he had a lot of very good teams throughout his tenures in Cleveland, San Diego, Kansas City. Just the man won over 200 games. So it's one of those things where it's like Don Coryell never got to the Super Bowl, but he had his success. He had success as a head coach in the NFL. And then of course, Mike Shanahan will eventually get in. If you win 2 Super Bowls as a head coach, you're going to get in at some point. It's very rare, I think, if ever, that a 2-time Super Bowl champion does not get in. It was, I believe, who was the coach for the Raiders? Tom Flores. Tom Flores was a 2-time Super Bowl champion for years. And I'm like, why is this guy not in the Hall of Fame? He just got in. So there you go. I'm fine with that. And I'm fine with whatever happens here this coming weekend in Canada. It should be an exciting time here for us all. So that is all the time we have here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Be sure, if you're on here, listen to our podcast, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Spotify for podcasters, YouTube here. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can find our latest articles and videos there. Obviously, all of our pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm everywhere on @Mitch Spinell and @Mitchell Balla, of course. You already got your fact of the day out of the way, Mitch. I'm going to get one here because I just saw this. Since 1962, the Houston Astros have thrown the most singular or combined no-hitters in major leagues between the regular season and the postseason. 16. Why are there so many no-hitters thrown in Houston?
Why can't we throw?
I don't know.
Why not?
I don't know. Len Barker, your former coach, took took all of the ability that a Cleveland pitcher could throw in a no-hitter and had it in a perfect game. It was that curveball, man. He had some sort of power that took away from all the great Cleveland pitchers that have come before or since. And we'll get one eventually. If the Padres can because I think there's only 2 teams left that have never thrown a no-hitter. And the Padres were a team that for a long time didn't have it. And then they got one, I think. Let me take a look at it here. Well, the Mets were without one, and then Johan Santana threw one without a no-hitter. Okay, Colorado, Tampa Bay. There's no way a Baltimore pitcher's never thrown one. There is no way. What? Colorado Rockies and Tampa Bay Rays. I get. Wait, no. What was his name? Matt Garza. Didn't he throw one for Tampa Bay? This has to be an old article. This is from 2020. I'm all over the place right now. This is fascinating to me. What is this? Tampa Bay Rays, Colorado Rockies, and did Matt Garza throw one against the Rays? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Maybe as a Cub.
Threw a no-hitter in 20. Yeah, no, he was with the Rays. This one's wrong. Bijay Gawali of MLBRun.com. What are you doing? Come on, man. Or wait, no. Okay, hold on. This is MLB teams without a no-hitter. It's not teams who have never been no-hit. Colorado Rockies, Tampa Bay Rays. I'm not putting the Orioles in there. That's too wrong. So basically, it's Tampa. Son of a bitch. It's Baltimore and Colorado. Baltimore and Colorado. Colorado makes sense. You have the thin air out there. Nobody can throw a no-hitter. No! Damn, Ubaldo Jimenez! Damn it! What is going on? I'm almost positive he threw one. This is why you check your sources, kids. All right. So, all right. I got to look at another source here before we go. I'm so sorry, folks. I got a list of Major League Baseball no-hitters by team. Okay. No, every team has had. Okay, so I was wrong the whole time. No, every team has a no-hitter, at least one no-hitter. There we go. Okay.
We just had the longest drought.
Yes. Oh, there's some defunct teams that never threw one, though. Most of them are from the 1890s. So there we go. But yeah, MLB teams with a single hitter: Colorado, San Diego, Tampa Bay, and Toronto. So there you go. Okay, that's all we have here. Thanks so much for listening or watching to the Fact Check Big Time Sports Podcast Show.